Hi, this is Mary Baca with Remotely Unique, and I am in the studio today with a special guest, Stephanie Villalobos, who's the Executive Director for Valencia Shelter Services. Hi, welcome.
Hi, Mary.
Long time no see.
I know. Let's walk from one room to another.
That's the joy, right? It happens all right here. I was, I went to the event. It was fun, the fundraising event that you had. And which happened just last Saturday, what was the purpose of the event for our listeners?
Yeah, so Valencia Shelter Services, or VSS for short, I'm going to call it VSS, moved prior to the pandemic into a bigger facility that actually would meet the needs for the community.
Located in Las Lunas, right?
Located in Las Lunas, yep. And so that event was to do a fundraiser, but also to open the doors to the facility, to the community for the first time since pandemic hit. So that was the whole goal in that, and to raise some money for some of the client needs that we've been seeing during the pandemic. That was the whole goal.
Well, and so talk about like the population you serve. What's the purpose of VSS?
So VSS is what we call a tri-service agency. So that means that we are doing domestic violence work, sexual assault services, and child abuse work there.
Oh, wow.
So our hope,
winter.
Yep, our hope is to be able to have families in our community seek support and service, and it all be in one place. So you don't have to send somebody else to this agency or that agency, and it's all in-house in one. That's the goal.
That's really good to know. And I really want to start collaborating with you. Like, I want to meet with you sometime soon, maybe you and your staff, and look at how, because we're not doing sexual abuse survivor groups here right now yet. But it'd be great to partner with you guys and have a place where because we do get quite a few people from Valencia County, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I've worked with a lot of the first responders out there, and and just that way we could refer people to you, And I love meeting people, like building a relationship with people and knowing that they're going to get well taken care of, because you know how that goes,
yes,
right?
I do.
I don't even need to say anything more about that. So it's nice when, you know people and you're handing them off to an agency where you know who runs it and you know that it's going to go well for that person, That means a lot to me and to my staff too. So it'd be great maybe to, I would love to come to maybe one of your staff meetings sometime and meet them and just really connect a name with a face, even though I did for a little bit for the event. But it seemed like everybody was having a great time. The vendors all seemed very supportive and familiar with you guys. I noticed that. So.
Yeah, in Valencia County, we have a very wonderful connection to the community in the way that how we all take care of each other and how they take care of us, and it's nice. It's nice to have had an event of people with the same goal. It was nice to spend time and educate people on what we do, but also to have them kind of understand the work that we're doing and how do they help in that. How do you help be a part of the movement, and that was nice.
And maybe too, like them sending people to you that otherwise might not get help, because But I know everything was going well, and then it got all windy and rainy. We were all having a good old time, and then we had to leave. I was like, dang it. So how long have you been with VSS?
For 6 years I've been with VSS.
And how'd you start?
I actually was hired to bring on the sexual assault services to VSS initially.
So you were working with
I was an advocate.
The sexual assault program, the Sexual Assault Coalition?
No. With VSS itself to bring on its sexual assault service.
To develop
component.
That component.
Yeah, so VSS initially was just domestic violence work.
Okay.
And
I didn't know till right now that it was what did you call it? Tri-focused
Tri-service.
or tri-service? Yeah, I didn't even know that till right now.
Yep, we're the only one in central New Mexico.
Oh, wow.
So, so originally that's where I came on board, was to build the sexual assault services in Valencia County, as an advocate. And I had did that about like 6 months, and then was promoted to take on the advocacy team, which does all of our outpatient kind of work. So if somebody needs assistance with going to court or filing legal documents, that would be the team that did that. Any human services component, anything like that. They basically are, I laugh and say that they're like our chameleons of the team. Mm-hmm. So anything else that we don't cover, that team kind of covers for us. And physically walking with people to do things after something's happened.
And that's so helpful. I was harassed and threatened by a client years ago. Mm-hmm. I don't even know how many years ago. And so I had a victim's advocate, and that was so helpful. I mean, she went to court with me, and I had never been through something like that before, which is hard when you go through something like that professionally. Mm-hmm. And she was great. I mean, that was just, I couldn't believe how helpful that was. So in the situation with your folks, the things that your clientele go through that bring them for services, yeah, I bet that's like a lifesaver for those men and women.
Well, and when you think about it, there's no legal literacy in high schools or anything. So like when people are interacting with some sort of court or justice system, the traumatic event that brought them there, this is their first time that they're ever doing it. Yeah, we've seen it on TV and all that, but it's very different when you're physically walking through it. And we don't necessarily teach people how to do that. And so when you have, advocacy is always, I think, like the unsung hero in some situations, because it's literally somebody who has that type of expertise, that's their job. And then they can say, hey, these are the options here. You get to pick that, and I'll walk it with you. But at least ahead of time, like, where to go with it and what are your options. That's all the goal. Mm-hmm. And, some people have never stepped foot in a courtroom before. Wow. And then this is their first time, and unfortunately it's right after something.
That's a whole other thing, right?
Yeah.
That experience. So when somebody comes to your agency, is there an intake person that then kind of triages, or how does that work?
Well, we have many different ways people go to us. A big one is our 24-hour hotline that's attached to our shelter. And that hotline has been the same number we've had for 31 years. An advocate of VSS has answered that hotline for 31 years. Wow. It's huge. And that person usually will take the call, understand kind of what's going on, make sure we safety plan if there's a threat coming up right now. And then we'll kind of filter them into the appropriate service. We also have a lot of walk-ins, so we allow people to just come and say, hey, I need some help, I need some security support, and we'll work with them, kind of like whoever's kind of available. We kind of are all about, what's the crisis, let's move around that. And so
you're all kind of cross-trained
uh-huh.
to handle that piece of things.
Yep. And so then they can walk into the office. You can also call our main office during the business hours, of course, and then we'll kind of get a good feel of what's kind of going on and then appoint you to the right person to start the work. I will say that usually advocacy team, the team that I just talked about, is usually the one that will handle cases right away. We'll triage safety. We'll work out with that person. Okay, so what's burning for you right now? What do you need help with? Mm-hmm. And
which is hard sometimes with that population to even prioritize because they need so much, often.
Mm-hmm. Or sometimes it's something that we who have not experienced the trauma are like, I would say that is more important, like making sure you have like a place to live or house. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes for them, it's like, no, I need a cell phone before I get a house. And it's like, okay, like, hey, if that's where you are, I'll meet you right there.
Oh, nice.
And then so we work on that.
Now, I didn't see, when you took me for the tour, I would understand why not. I didn't see like where people are actually sheltered, but is that on site?
No, not on site. It is at an alternative, undisclosed location.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense. Okay. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, and so that's another part of the service. We do have an 18-bed shelter that is a retrofitted home, and we kind of like it that way on purpose because it does keep that home feel.
Yes,
and it doesn't get into this kind of like really cold atmosphere of facility, and it's more home based. And so like the clients that stay there, they some enjoy cooking, and then they cook for the whole house. There's different families there, but they're all in different stages of the healing, but they're all taking investment into the house together and working in that.
Yeah, it's beautiful because that's therapeutic on a different level. I know years ago I worked for a teen parent residential treatment center that was housed in apartments, but it was beautiful because of that. For the holidays they make meals and they decorate, and it's as close to home as you can get. Anyways, and they get really close.
They do.
Bad and good, fight. These girls used to argue, and have their little like family like dynamics going on. But they were very close even after they left the program. Those were relationships that really, and I would imagine it's kind of similar. Huh.
Yeah.
Are your beds always full?
During the pandemic, we did see a huge increase in call volume. And if we were able to leverage hotel stays at that point in time, we did write a grant, and that was, of course, for 1 year funding during pandemic, to be able to kind of like expand the 18 beds into hotels, to try to get people in somewhat of a quarantine state in the middle of a pandemic when we really, in the beginning, didn't really know what was going on or how to expect or how do we keep people safe. We were one of the only shelters that really remained open the whole time and didn't shy away from the fact that.
Did some of the shelters close?
Yeah.
That would be so hard for the community.
Well,
I understand, but
yeah, it wasn't their fault. I mean, in the beginning, you have to think back to March in that time. We didn't know half of the things we know now. Right. We didn't know how it was being able to be transmitted. We didn't know anything. And so a lot of the shelters were like, well, we want to keep the clients that we do have safe, right, and the staff safe. And yes, and we still have a need coming, and it was a lot of people coming.
What's the percentage of the increase?
It's hard to say on the percentage, though, but I will say that what I did see is that we were seeing at least kind of what you quoted was the 40%. But on top of that, it was also to an increase in violence. So the cases that we were seeing, the lethality level on these cases were reaching huge spikes that we had never seen before. A lot of abuse that was cases that we normally would see in acute cases, like very like specific strained cases, started to become a trend. I know that, of course, trauma reminders, I talk about this because I do know that some of the listeners have probably experienced this, but what I will say is that we did see a lot of strangulation cases that came up that we hadn't before.
Any ideas about why?
I think when you're in a domestic violence situation and all of the safe places were gone, where you now have to stay specifically isolated in an abusive situation at home, which is not safe, and all the safe people, like, kids who go to school, they see a teacher, they see somebody outside of that, or if I am a victim experiencing that abuse, I go out to work. There's safe people around me where I can like leave and go back into that situation. But when we quarantined and put everybody in their home and had no outside interaction, we really saw like how much stress on a family include like of the basic needs items not being, we all made the joke about not having toilet paper and all these things, but really all these basic needs stuff started to become stressors on these families who had an unsafe environment at home. And then when we quarantined them, all the stressors of basic need and survival and losing jobs and all this happened. The violence just like shot up immensely. And it wasn't just to victims, it was also to kiddos.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I wonder what that percentage is like. Probably similar,
Right? Yeah.
Because if you have domestic violence, there's child abuse. Like, that's just an automatic. I mean, maybe not physical child abuse, but, emotional and mental. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I think that going into the pandemic, a lot of people were struggling anyways, mental health-wise, not getting help for it. And then you throw all of us into this situation that is unpredictable, and serious, and all these things. And, I think a lot of people just didn't have the coping mechanisms to cope with all of it.
No.
So it's, it's interesting. But yeah, somebody had told me 40%. I don't know if that was for Bernalillo County. I talked to so many people, but I was like, wow. But I was shocked, but I wasn't. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I thought, well, that kind of makes sense. People are alone, and that's not always a good thing. Whereas before they'd get away and go to school, kid would go to school and I think that's what you're kind of meaning, right? People with the husband and wife would go to work, and so that would kind of break the tension. But if you just don't have anywhere to go, man, talk about mounting pressure.
Yep.
There probably shouldn't have been money problems because, the unemployment rates were paid out like as much as or more than what people's income were.
Right. But also, too, in the beginning of that time, we had worked a couple cases, too, where it was taking at least, 6 months to process their unemployment. So, yes, they did eventually get it, but you still have, that 6-month gap of when employers are starting to send people home to then, or losing jobs, furloughing, into gaining access to public benefits. Mm-hmm. So in all that 6 months' time, there's a lot of things that can happen. Mm-hmm. Stressed out, worried about how you pay your rent.
And then substance abuse. I remember standing in line at the grocery store one time, and this guy was like, well, I'm just going to get drunk all day. I mean, there's nothing else to do. And he was serious. And so him and his wife were bickering about that, right? And I thought, that's probably so many people's story. Mm-hmm. Is, that's how I'm going to cope, is drink. Mm-hmm. And with, the stress and then the boredom, So I bet that happened quite a bit. It would be interesting to ask, a substance abuse program, mm-hmm. if those numbers increased. I'm sure they did.
Well, yeah. I mean, there was no access to something else. It kind of felt like for, the beginnings of it, it's like everything kind of slowed down abruptly and it paused. And then the uncertainty of, the things that we know now of, vaccine and how do you prevent it and, all those rules started to come out. So then there was some structure. It felt better. Still mm-hmm. sucks, definitely does. But it felt a little bit more manageable mm-hmm. if mm-hmm. we had guidelines. But in the beginnings, we had no clue. It was mm-hmm. just mass fear.
Mass fear, mm-hmm. yeah. Which then causes anxiety. Now we have over 100 people on our wait list, mm-hmm. and I think most agencies in town are booked, which really breaks my heart because I've had to tell people who are wanting help, before people weren't seeking help. A lot of times. We were still really busy. But it's heartbreaking to have to tell somebody we too have a wait list because they've called other agencies, or then we have to give them a referral to another agency who may have a long wait list too. And it's so difficult, Yeah. We're trying to hire some more people, but even that, I think now counselors are not graduating as quick as the need is.
Right. Well, I sat with this, when you asked me that you wanted me to come and I took some time and I thought about it. And it was the one thing that I'm watching as we work these cases is that we healing professionals can't even get to the trauma that resulted in them coming in to see us in the first place mm-hmm. because we are currently working on the trauma that they're experiencing because of the pandemic. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so because we are not at a finalized place with this, we can't even touch the original trauma that brought it. Mm-hmm. So we're working on this and trying to work on coping mechanisms for the moment because we're all going through this. So we're all being traumatized in some form or way. Mm-hmm. But the healing time for cases such as domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse is going to be even that much longer, because we got to negotiate through this pandemic time to then get to this place where they feel safe to talk about what really brought them here.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about the sexual trauma stats? Have those increased too?
Yeah, again, a higher rate of violence within those cases as well. But the one thing that keeps coming up with our sexual assault world is how many gaps we have for services in the state of New Mexico as it pertains to sexual assault services. And how important it is right now to really highlight the need within that population. My program right now is actually working to try to bring on a SANE unit, and for those who don't know what a SANE is, it's a sexual assault nurse examiner's unit that collects forensic evidence on the incident that's happened. Now, the SANE sometimes is a misnomer because they also do domestic violence exams. So that means they're taking pictures of, injuries or anything like that, checking the body to make sure it's safe. A lot of clients, when something happens to their body, that's the first thing, like, is my body okay? Is it damaged forever? And it's nice to be able to have a medical professional say, no, perfectly healthy and fine,
This is going to heal. These are the stages of the physical healing.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have that on site, aren't you?
Yes.
That's what you were showing me.
So a part of that conversation, in bringing it, we realized that from Bernalillo County, Albuquerque to Las Cruces, there is no sexual assault service exam. Seriously. That's crazy. Right, so all of our people from Valencia have to travel to Bernalillo, or people from Socorro County, Bernalillo, right? Torrance, Catron, all of our people have to travel so far to get an exam like that, and who would want to? If
Well, you're talking a population that wants to bury that anyways, so.
Yeah. And so we're bringing that on, and we were discussing about how other, there's 13 rape crisis centers in the state of New Mexico, and it's the need.
And how many cities in New Mexico do you know? I don't know. I wonder. I mean, way more than 13. That kind of says like how scarce services really are for those specialized areas.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to testify at the Justice Committee this Tuesday with the Sexual Assault Coalition, and we talked about what does adequate care look like for somebody for sexual assault services in New Mexico. What should it look like? And what we determined was that it should be a rape crisis center with advocacy, counseling, comprehensive wraparound services. It would be a child advocacy center to be able to deal with the childhood trauma, because majorly, the cases that we see through the child advocacy center are sexual assault cases. And that place would also have a SANE unit. And when we looked at that being adequate care for people in our community, we realized that there's only 6 counties in our state that have all 3.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Right? Right? And so just holding that, like, what? Only 6 counties in our whole state have adequate services.
That's just crazy. It's so sad that there's not enough of an emphasis or importance, placed on mental health in general. And then when you talk about DV, all of that just seems like that goes down in the lower list of priorities in terms of government funding and things, It's just crazy.
And I will tell you that a lot of the cases that we've had, particularly recently, I would say through the pandemic, they all have 2 of the 3 that we serve. Either there is domestic violence with a coercion of control and sexual assaults, Or we also have domestic violence with kiddo witness, or abusers that are, abusing both their partner and a child. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, when you're looking at these family dynamics, we're seeing multiple victimizations in a family. And then when you talk about, like, what does advocate services look like? It has it cannot compete with what's happening.
Well, and the hard part is those populations, their needs are endless, and that's the hard thing.
Yeah.
There's so many layers there. I know when I've worked with those populations, because we do here, but it's different. Here we get domestic violence victims, of course, because unfortunately, right? But that's not all we do. So we get that mixed in with veterans, mixed in with first responders, mixed in with, people going through divorce where there's not DV. I mean, you guys specialize in that. And so I feel for your staff. I mean, you guys have to be some pretty freaking strong people, I'll tell you, to work with those issues day in, day out. You have to be in it for more than just a paycheck, for sure, right? Yeah. So talk about that.
I talk about my staff all the time. They are the unsung heroes always, but
the ones I met, they were lovely.
They're great. They come to this work, so I will say that there are some staff that work for us that have experienced some sort of victimization that we serve. And what I will say is that then I say becomes our superpower. They're able to walk with families through things that not just a normal person who hasn't experienced something can. They're able to pick up on things intuitively a little bit about, hey, this might be happening, I should ask that question. And all of them have this passion and this drive to support. And I will say, not just the direct service staff either. It even isn't in a part of our, administrative team, where they are all united in this idea that we're here to help people. And whatever that means, whatever your job means in the mission, right? But it all goes to a purpose and a point. And I think that for me to be a part of that team, not just the leader of it, but like just to even be a part of that team, and how much they care for their people and their community and how far they'll go. And we don't just send referrals. Like, we are thinking outside the box. Like, how can I help somebody? How do we get a funder or a donor to, get a bike for somebody because they got a new job and they want to be able to self-sustain and ride their bike? Simple things, little requests that state and federal funds don't support. This team is being able to just identify that and meet clients where they're at. Like, what would help you? What would help you? How can I help you? And sometimes it's requests that we as public who don't do the work would be like, that's a weird request, but would mean anything, everything to someone.
Yeah, even like a bike. I never thought about that, but yeah.
Simple basic needs that we think
make life so much easier, right? Which then decreases their stress, which then decreases, maybe anger. I mean, yeah, wow.
So I talk about them all the time, and I thank them for their service always. But when they sign on to help somebody, it's literally full on. We're in it. We're walking the whole path together. And I feel I was talking to one of our coalition members, and that was something that they had highlighted, that our agency's advocacy goes very far beyond just, let me fill out the form and send you to this person, to another agency to help your problem. We literally, advocacy to us is high standard. That is very our signature support. And it goes through everything that we do, even our counseling team. They do far, far beyond just let me sit here and have a session with you. Our housing team, that they go through that how can I help you beyond this? Because you're with us for 2 years. Let's make it count. Let's help you.
Is that the commitment? They commit to 2 years there?
Oh. Yeah.
So it's like a treatment program in a way.
Yep. And so all these people that sit in these seats that be able get the opportunity to help people, like they are very committed people, and I am very picky with who I hire.
You have to be, you know. But I think you said something that I think really rings true, is that would be a situation where if you've experienced it, unfortunately, it just makes you really have that passion and desire to help those people by knowing all the challenges, knowing, you know, how that whole scenario is, and, you know, and then having to do your own work enough to where you can be effective, you know.
Right.
How many staff do you have?
I have just over 30 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How many supervisors?
7.
So they have to be pretty doggone good.
They do. Well, when you were saying that, I was thinking about our emergency shelter and our shelter team that are literally in a home setting with clients who have just recently experienced trauma, like just happened, like within days. And they are supporting them and working with them on what just happened. And also, too, some of them, it's their first time being sole parents. So it's like, how can I help you with parenting? What can I do with your kids to give you a break, right? And walking through all that to be able to figure out, like, okay, so where do you want to go? Like, what's your goals? And for me, that shelter team, they really do get that full gamut of what you're talking about, like experiencing like trauma and then the triggers that happen, simple things that we wouldn't even see coming, and being able to work with that person to be able to support. Our shelter is one of 2 in the state of New Mexico that supports sexual assault clients in it. So we have domestic violence clients with those who have been sexually assaulted.
What is the stats on that? Probably kind of high.
For sexual assault?
Sexual assault within domestic violence.
Oh, a lot? Intimate.
Yeah, I would imagine. Because I think a lot of people think that sexual assault is about sex.
Oh, no.
And it's not. It's
about
power and control. So I know people, even with children, you know, where they say, well, you know, why did he rape that little girl? Like, wasn't his wife putting out? And I'm like, it has nothing to do with that. Yeah. And when I was a child abuse investigator, the wife, the woman, and I say women, there are women abusers too, as you know, but the majority, right, of reported anyways, are men. And but I remember the wife would be like, you know, I give him enough sex, and I'm like, it doesn't have anything to do with that. No. You know, it's about power and control. And I wasn't treating them. I was an investigator, but that always was said, like 98% of the time, you know, the focus was on the sexual aspect of the abuse. No. And abuse is all about power and control and coercion, you know. It isn't, it's so interesting. And most people don't realize that and don't get that and aren't educated about it.
Right. Well, I mean, this what we're talking about is that really dark side of the human nature, right? And it's not what people like to see or think about or talk about, but they're in the denial or pushing away of that conversation is how it continues to perpetuate.
Yes. And it doesn't discriminate.
Oh, no.
It's across all socioeconomic and gender and, you know, religion, and I mean, it does not discriminate.
No.
So it's not just poor people, you know, that are hitting each other, you know, because I think a lot of people think that too, you know. I remember years ago I was working for the Employee Assistance Program for the government, and I was in a meeting with high-ranking military officials. I mean, they were highly decorated. And they were like, oh, well, thank God. Like, in other words, I forget exactly what they said, but that kind of thing, like, oh, but that would never happen in any of our homes. Right. Because we're, you know, who we are. I'm like, probably, you know, several of you have, you know, because it happens a lot on a spectrum, but it happens a lot. Not everybody has to get beat for it to be violence, you know, verbal violence. Right? Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. That is the misnomer of a lot of the public speaking that I get to do, and I actually love that intersection in people's minds about like, oh, that's other people, not me, right? And that as actually a healing mechanism for the person who hasn't experienced it to say, oh, that I'm separating myself from that instant, so then therefore I'm safe. And it's normal for the brain to do that. But what I will say is that doing this work as long as I have, we are one incident away from being at the other side of the table when we're talking, right? And that's something super important that I highlight from my team and that we train on, is that because domestic violence it does not discriminate at all. We have to be prepared to understand that we are an incident away from being just like the clients that we serve. And how scary and yucky is that thought, right? We have to be comfortable being uncomfortable in this type of work. And if you're not, then you're not really going to do really good work.
Yeah, not everybody's cut out, and that's not a negative, but not everybody is cut out to work with domestic violence or sexual assault or child abuse.
Right.
Like I've met, because I'm a continuing education provider, and I've met so many counselors that I'm like, that are thin-skinned, and that's okay. Just know your limit then. And don't take it on. That's what concerns me, like with therapists that go into private practice, because oftentimes you don't know that people have those issues till they've been in your office maybe several times, maybe months, and some people are not equipped to deal, not psychologically and mentally and emotionally equipped to deal with those issues.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Again, it's fine. Know your limits and refer out, But some people don't do that.
Or even have a conversation with the local victim service agency.
Yes,
to be able to
yes.
support in any way.
Absolutely.
And so then you, as the helping professional in a therapeutic setting, can just worry about that piece, because then therefore they have the advocate to do the crisis stuff with.
And that's why I want to collaborate with you guys, and I'm happy to get to know you better, because I feel like we have, with the energy work and the, trauma focus in terms of body work, we have that to offer. And you guys have the support that you're saying, or if we get, a certain level of, acuity that somebody has been through that's beyond our scope, then we have support where if we need a victim's advocate, or we just have questions about how the system works, or all of that, and probably more, that I haven't even thought of. We now have you guys to, where I can pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to pick your brain about something,
Definitely.
And vice versa. I was attending a domestic violence online webinar through the pandemic, and they said something. The whole topic was on strangulation. And I thought, man, I have to work to clear their throat chakra out. Like, it just came to me, because, not only because of the trauma to the throat, but domestic violence victims hold things in a lot.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have a voice. They're not allowed to have a voice. And some people that aren't even in domestic violent relationships, they're not allowed to have a voice,
Right.
So, so that's something I want to work with you guys on and visit more, because I'm putting together some trauma packages that include, like, counseling, but then the energy work, to really kind of correspond with the counseling part.
Right.
So that's exciting. Who does your grant writing?
Me.
Do you like it? I like to write.
Well, no. So I have to
You're
say,
like, well, no, I don't.
Well, I do. But I do have to say that for a very long time it was me, but now we have had the ability to hire a development director. Her name is Vicki, and she is wonderful, and she is writing grants for
Oh, yeah, I
us.
think I met her. And who finds the grants?
It weirdly, we get them everywhere. So people will be like, oh, I thought of you. Here's this thing. And I'm like,
Wow.
oh, weird. Intuitive.
I may want to pick your brain. I'm more than likely going to start another nonprofit to help first responders and healthcare workers. Just two. But I'm not as involved with the other one anymore. But it's for healthcare workers and child protection. So it's different than Behind the Badge. Mm-hmm. The service coverage is expanded, because child protection workers, I see so many through the years in therapy, and nobody ever stops and thinks about, man, their jobs are stressful. And I know, well, when I was a child abuse investigator, I did it for a year and then I left, not because of the kids, but because of the dysfunction of the system.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot handle this, you know?
Yeah. I employ a lot of I do not term them this, they have termed themselves this. Recovering state workers is what they call themselves. And they get into the work on this side of the, victim service because of the ability to actually like do more work and being able to do more things than just like, this is the line, don't cross it. And yeah, I mean, some of the COFD workers, investigation workers that we work with through the Child Advocacy Center, wonderful, amazing people. They get into the work to do really great things. And then for whatever reason, because of politics, because of, red tape here or there, or something happened, there's a legal case, what do you call it, class action lawsuit or something happened, they can't do that thing. And seeing these cases just go on and on initially, like this really intense trauma that these workers are walking into, and then not really being able to do a lot of the things that they thought that they could get into the work to do, and not being able to see these families kind of like go through the healing process. It's a very easy burnout rate.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I saw Barbara Romo at your event, and I hadn't met her, so that was nice because I wanted to meet her because she actually contracted with me to do a debriefing recently. In being in this field 38 years, I've never seen that done. And it was like a breath of fresh air that a DA would be taking care of their people like that, and yeah, I mean, it was great. I've never had that happen ever. And it should, because prosecutors, they see a lot of stuff. It's horrible.
They get it pretty bad because of all the laws that they have to do. Us like non-legal people are able to kind of see like, oh yeah, that this story makes sense with the events. When you look into the legal part and all the laws and the gaps within it, they have to navigate all kinds of really hard situations.
So much different.
And tiny itty-bitty technicalities could just ruin a whole case for them. And so that's always, I laugh, but like our advocates and our staff are literally advocates for the system too. So like they have been able to, as they work cases for victims, they're making meaningful connections with their service workers and our, legal people and our law enforcement. And a lot of the time they sit and talk with them after to debrief because they understand that
it's
they're
those
not getting it.
Informal services.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Riding up on an elevator or, after a call or something where you're really providing a service, even though it's not in the office and under a counseling relationship. So
definitely
happens a lot.
And so all of them have this the thing that comes up a lot in those conversations with the system is like, my hands really feel tied. I feel like I can't do what I know as a human being should be the end result and the support for this. But because of my job and the limitations and the box that I'm in, I can't.
Yeah, well, the debriefing I did, it wasn't just about the case. It was because of that kind of stuff, too, that really leaves people bothered, and I get it. Yeah. Because what you want to do and what you can do often are two very different things. Right. Tell us about your future meditation room.
Okay, so a part of expanding our expanding services to include the SANE meant that we needed extra room and space, right? And a part of that became a really great opportunity for us to create a space for staff that they can have a moment, take a break, as we've all talked about this whole time about the hard things and the challenging things that they see or experience, the secondary trauma, all these things. And with your guidance, the idea of bringing something like that for the team became something that I couldn't ignore.
I'm so excited and so grateful to you that you're willing to do that for yourself and your team.
For me, it's really for me.
I know, that's what I say, because I'm creating a sound bar here and I'm like, you'll be able to find me and they're asleep. Do it for me.
Just keep walking. Don't
but
ask me
a lot of administrators aren't willing to do those things, and I don't understand, but I guess it's priority, and you placed a priority, and you have a designated room, and so that's the most important part. And so, yeah, it's exciting. I'm excited to see how that evolves,
Yeah. It's funny that you say that. I get on this soapbox about it, about leaders. If you're in a leadership position, in whatever field, whatever you're doing, your duty then also becomes, how do I take care of the people that are doing the work on my team in order to make sure whatever service I'm providing or whatever is to the best ability that it is. And I think a lot of leaders get wrapped up in we haven't never done it this way and this is the way we should do it too much, and they don't question, like, how do I make my team's life a little easier within reason.
And you're going to have them around longer, and they'll be more present.
Oh yeah. Talk about how much time and energy do you invest in people, right? Like, how much training do you give people in the beginnings, and to see that all kind of like burn out at the end, it's heartbreaking. You definitely, for you as a leader too, because then you got to do it again.
I know.
So like, I challenge that, and I think that has been one of my strengths, and also the one thing that I am criticized on sometimes is that I am a young ED. I think I am the youngest one in the state for our area, our type of work. I am 31, and I am constantly
Holy cow. Wow. You're a lot more mature than that. I would not have thought that. That's amazing.
31, and I'm constantly pushing the limits. I'm like, what? Can we do this? Can we add that? Well, what about this? Or do we have to do it this way? Mm-hmm. Like, even though we've done it this many years, like, doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And so, for those listening who have that, I say, ability to be a leader in something, think about that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you can step outside the box, right, to some degree. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are you a counselor?
Am I? No, I am not. I was an advocate, came to the work with a bachelor's degree in criminology.
Oh,
Was supposed to study crime, and I did not. I was like, I'd rather help people. And that's how I started, and I just really loved the advocacy work and helping people. Had the opportunity with VSS and my prior executive director, Alexandria Taylor, who's a huge mentor of mine. She invested a lot of training into all of us staff, and she's actually the one that really showed me what it's like to be a leader and what does that mean. And was able to get a lot of training under my belt, and I do like to do trainings for therapists and these kinds of things, because then it gives me a different viewpoint. Mm-hmm. And talk to people. Like, everybody in the world is your teacher. Let them teach you something.
I know. Isn't that so true?
Yeah.
I think that's so true. I learn things every day from the people I work on, and, I love meeting people, because every conversation, I feel like I learn something new, which is great. Mm-hmm. So... Well, thank you so much for coming in, and I look forward to getting to know your staff better and you better, and using you as a resource, just really helping each other, because to me that's what it's all about. We're all on the same team. Yeah. We're all out there to help people, whatever that looks like, and I think that there's not enough collaboration in the community a lot of times, but power is in numbers. So I think, together we can really just make that much more of a dent in some very difficult situations.
The best thing that you can do in those moments is just listen and acknowledge and validate. Mm-hmm. There's no fix, there's no secret fix to that. That's literally what
and we don't always have to have the answer. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people, they just feel valuable if we take the time to sit and listen. I mean, it seems like such a small thing, but it's not really,
Yeah.
Well, thank you. You can find today's show on Facebook, October, what is the date? What is that date? 4th, and Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, and our YouTube channel on YouTube. So join us there, and we'll see you later. Until then, be good to each other and to yourselves. Bye for now.